So before we begin, just make sure your phones are off, please. Thank you for our generous sponsors, Sarah and John Kissinger. Sarah, Lane's Lemonade for the lemonade coffee that we had, and the Sterling Society. If you want to join the Sterling Society, go to the Arts Center, type in the Sterling Society, and we'll talk. We're pleased to have today our artist, author, and educator, Suzanne Elizabeth Murphy. After years of New York and Colorado, where she built a straw bale house and began painting. Okay. She settled in Florida and found an open sky studio and gallery in Tarpon Springs. She's taught painting widely, served on the city's public art committee, and her work was collected across the country. Suzanne first presented at the DFAC Coffee Conversation in 2016. Her self-narrated audiobook, Mirabelle and the Sea Green Bathtub, is now available on audiobook platforms. After the event, you can stop by the gallery shop and see more of the paintings and copies of the art book. So we'd like to welcome Suzanne, and she's going to take questions after she does. I just want to say a little bit before I start talking about the book. I want to thank Danny Olda for allowing me to present in this prestigious Coffee and Conversation series. And thank you to your team, especially Cassie Combs and Dion, for all the preparation it takes for this conversation. And Adrienne Smith you all know Adrienne Smith in English. She has been the driving force for me at the DFAC, for me and for Mirabelle. She's a fellow scuba diver, and she told me that my book got it just right. And I cannot be grateful enough. Thank you, Adrienne. My studio partner, Percy Kleinhouse, please stand up. He helps me with everything. I could not get through a day in my studio and gallery without him. My husband, Brooks Fountain, is the guy who fixes me dinner at night when I'm in the studio all day, and all I have to do is have a drink of water and sit down. I want to thank the person who first brought awareness to me about the corals and the coral reef and their dilemma. That was Jacques Cousteau. In the late 70s and 80s, he was telling us what would happen, and it has happened. It was wonderful. I saved all the articles, all the magazines I subscribed to with the Cousteau Society, and I guess there's nothing to do now except read my little dedication, and then I'll begin the book. Dedicated to keeping safe every living creature in the deep blue seas, but especially corals and little seahorses. For my mother, Mary Virginia Murphy Smith, who taught me everything important. Last October, I was a lucky recipient of a Creative Canals Impact Grant that allowed me to publish the first 250 Mirabelle and the Sea Green Bathtub books. I had been wondering how I would do that. Everything great that has ever come into my life has been a result of taking a giant leap of faith into the unknown. That's what this book was. I was painting for exhibition. A giant leap of faith that I could do it, that I could tell the story and make the pictures that had been in my head for almost 40 years when I was a scuba diver. I wrote a draft of the story as a scuba diver living in NYC. I was fearful in that cold lake in New Jersey where I trained for certification. The wetsuit, the big fins, the face mask, heavy air tank, weight belt, breathing tube, and regulator. All of it made me feel clumsy and not myself. I had to learn how to make it all part of me. After all, I If I had not faced my fears, I would never have discovered the mystery and beauty of the coral reefs. I would not have those images and feelings of that world 40, 50, 60 feet down that prompted me to write a children's book about it. As I entered the world of visual storytelling, composing images on canvas from my words, I reconnected to my childhood 20th century illustrator heroes such as N.C. Wyeth, Howard Pyle, and Arthur Rackham. And for the last 3 years, my journey as an artist has been Mirabelle's journey through her adventures, wonder, sadness, and trust. Trust in herself and the difference she might make. That's what I hope I have been doing with my art all these years. And that's what I hope Mirabelle and I can do together for the fragile coral reefs in Florida and around the world. Make a difference. And now, the story. Chapter 1. A girl with the heart of a mermaid lived far from the sea. Mirabelle was her name. Her fondest wish was to swim with the fish below the emerald waves, but she could only swim in her big Sea Green Bathtub. It stood in the center of the room, where a painted fish swam across a blue tiled floor. A small golden mermaid perched on the faucet and curled her tail around the water spout. Mirabelle filled the bathtub with water and sprinkled in daisies from her garden. She floated on her back and let her long red hair spread out around her, and sometimes she blew bubbles or puckered up her lips to look like a fish. Today, she pushed her daisies through the water like ships on the ocean and sang her song to the sea. Suddenly, something happened that had never happened before in the Sea Green Bathtub. It came in a splash and made Mirabelle blink. Up through the daisies popped a tiny yellow seahorse, no bigger than the mermaid on the water spout. "Was that you singing up here?" he asked. His words sounded like a stream of bubbles. "Where did you come from?" she asked. He swam standing up, and a dainty fin on his back fluttered in the water like an angel's wing. "Your song slowed down to my garden, that's how I found you," answered the little seahorse, as he anchored his tail around a daisy stem to steady himself. "How could there be a garden under my bathtub?" asked Mirabelle. "How could there be anything?" "There's a whole world under your bathtub," he replied. The seahorse swam closer to Mirabelle. "I live in a garden where flowers are worms and cucumbers are animals," he whispered. "Worms can't be flowers," she laughed out loud. "The sea is full of possibilities, and the possibilities depend on how you look at things," he said. "How did you get there?" Mirabelle asked. "Just come with me. You don't have far to go," explained the seahorse. "The Sea Green Bathtub is as deep as the ocean and as wide as the sea. I swim in my Sea Green Bathtub every day, but I never go anywhere," she cried. "Perhaps you haven't been cooking like a fish," she suggested. "Yes, I have," she said. She puffed out her cheeks and puckered up her lips. The seahorse shook his head. "What you really need to do is feel like a fish." "How do I do that?" she asked. "First, close your eyes," he began. Mirabelle covered her eyes with her hands, but she peeked through the cracks between her fingers to see what he would do next. "At the beginning," he said, "let your thoughts rest on the color blue." "But the sea is emerald green," she said, dropping her hands from her face. "Not down below," he said patiently. "Below, the sea is blue." Mirabelle closed her eyes tightly this time as he continued. "Imagine," he said, "that the waves are your sky, the water is your air, and the blue sun shines down to light the way." Behind her closed eyes, Mirabelle began to see the blue light. "The water is calm below the waves," he explained. "It holds you up and rocks you gently, as if you weighed nothing at all." Mirabelle drifted like a feather. The sea is full of sounds. Drumfish drumming, crab legs clicking, dolphins whistling, all out at sea. Mirabelle began to hear them all. "Are you ready now?" the seahorse asked. "Oh, yes," she answered. "Then follow me," came the reply. "To the sea, to the sea." Mirabelle opened her eyes, and down they swam through the bottomless sea green bathtub. Her hair, like red seaweed, trailed behind her as she followed the seahorse down into his water world of blue. The waves became her sky. The water became her air, and a blue sun shone down to light their way. Far below stretched the eerie glow of pale blue sand. As they went deeper, they passed trees that looked like reindeer antlers and fields thick with swirling cabbage leaves. Green boulders lay on the sand like sleeping giants. A gentle current, like a warm breeze, carried Mirabelle and the seahorse through the blue water, like birds through a blue sky. Hundreds of little fish dodged past them this way and that. Their skins glimmered like jewels as the rainbow colors flickered by in the twilight blue water. Chapter 2. The sea certainly is a busy place, she thought. Everyone seems to have something to do and somewhere to go. The seahorse stopped to greet a committee of small fish, curious to see the girl from the Sea Green Bathtub. Sergeant Major fish paraded their black and yellow stripes for her to admire, and when she wasn't looking, a blue damselfish swam right up to Mirabelle's nose and nibbled it. "That's not very polite," she said, as the bold little fish darted away. "Where are we?" she asked the seahorse, but he was nowhere in sight. A queen angelfish passing by heard her question. She wore a tiny crown on her head and had pretty blue lips. "You're under the Sea Green Bathtub at the edge of the sea, and this is the coral where the corals live, of course." "Oh," said Mirabelle. "Can you tell me what a coral is?" The angelfish circled Mirabelle as if to get a better look at her, and then replied, "Down, down in the deep blue sea, not all is as it appears to be, and there are things that you'll not see, however near those things may be, until you learn to see in the sea that everything is a possibility." The queen angelfish swam on. What could she mean by that? And where is that seahorse, wondered Mirabelle. She asked the fishes stayed sailing by, "Have you seen a seahorse?" "The garden's the place," said the flat thunder. "Look in the garden," sang the chorus of young yellowtails. "Where else but the garden?" answered a school of squirrelfish. The reply was always the same. "But how do I get there from here?" she said to no one in particular. From the wall behind her, a deep, gravelly voice spoke. "Look past the star coral cabin, up through the black coral trees, and just beyond the old barrel sponge. Go." Mirabelle whirled around and found two huge bulging eyes staring back at her. She paddled backwards a little. Half hidden under a rocky ledge, an alarmingly large fish watched her from his lair. "I can see you there," she said, trying to sound not afraid. "You weren't supposed to," he would reproach. He kept one eye on Mirabelle, and as only a fish can do, rolled the other eye toward two smaller yellowtails swimming close by. Suddenly, the grouper snapped open his huge jaws, and a whoosh of water rushed into his gaping mouth. Gulp! The yellowtails barely escaped being pulled in with the water. "Now kindly go away," he muttered, obviously annoyed. "I can't catch my lunch if you keep talking to it." "But how can I find the garden if I don't know?" "Don't know what?" grumbled the grouper. "Don't know what a coral is," she answered. "A coral is an animal, of course," he grinned. "Just follow the wall," he said, chuckling low to himself and closing his eyes. She waited for him to open them again, but he seemed to have gone to sleep. "Now what will I do?" Mirabelle sighed as she left the grouper to his nap. She looked back up the wall she had traveled with the seahorse. That way could take her back to the Sea Green Bathtub. It's not very far, she said to herself. Then she turned and looked down the wall in the other direction. It wound far ahead. Perhaps this way would lead to the garden. But where else might it lead to? She wondered. She wanted to find the garden where flowers could be worms and cucumbers could be animals. She wanted to know what a coral was, and she certainly had to find out what had happened to the little seahorse. I can't go back now. I'll just have to find my own way, she said. She let the gentle current carry her forward toward the unknown, and as she did, a bit of red seaweed caught in her hair and mingled with it. Mirabelle followed the wall along the edge of the sea. It dipped and curved like the hem of a skirt embroidered with brilliant colors. Fish no bigger than her thumbnail swam in and out of ruffled blue leaves. Long, hollow tubes of orange and purple protruded like silent trumpets. Everything about the wall reminded Mirabelle that this wasn't home. Only the beautiful flowers that grew on it seemed familiar, but each time she reached out to touch them, the flowers closed up tight and disappeared back into the wall. She'd never seen a flower do that, but down here, nothing seemed to do quite what she expected. Chapter 3. On Mirabelle's right, beyond the wall, the open sea lay before her. A blue, empty sea. It was like looking into outer space. But this is sea space, she reminded herself. But wait, it wasn't empty. Something was out there. Something very large. It moved silently behind a watery veil of blue, like a shadow on a wall, like a dark cloud drifting across the sky. And then it vanished. Mirabelle left the wall to follow it. "Not that way," a small voice shouted. She looked back to see the little seahorse hurrying toward her from along the wall, a yellow dot growing bigger as he neared. "Thank the blue sea I found you in time," he said. "We're on the edge of the deep. You can't go swimming off in just any direction." "I hadn't thought of that," she said. She was very glad to see the seahorse. "Why did you leave me alone?" she asked. "I was always with you and watching from the wall," he assured her. "We're a long way from home, yours and mine. Home in my garden is the safest place for a seahorse," he said, looking about cautiously. "And the sooner we get there, the safer I will be." As they turned in the direction of the star coral cabin, the seahorse would say no more. The farther they went, the more the beauty of the water world filled Mirabelle's thoughts. Her world above fell away, and soon she had almost forgotten that she was far, far from her sea green bathtub. She asked the seahorse the name of every fish and why seahorses swim standing up. She told him about the strange flowers in the wall. She asked if he knew the meaning of the queen angelfish's riddle. "She means that things are not always what they seem. Rocks are not always rocks, and flowers are never flowers." But before he could explain more, a mountain pitted with caves and tunnels loomed in front of them. An orange octopus climbed to his hiding place high above. They had arrived at the star coral caverns. Mirabelle wasn't used to the way things appeared and disappeared down here. They seemed to come out of nowhere in front of her and then disappeared just as quickly behind her. And everything was blue until she came near. She was close enough now to see that the star coral caverns were emerald green and studded with red flowers. Or were they flowers? A long, fuzzy creature came wiggling up to the seahorse. He looked like a giant caterpillar, but the seahorse introduced him as the sea cucumber. "What brings you so far from the garden, seahorse?" "I've been up to the Sea Green Bathtub," answered the seahorse. Why would the seahorses invite a stranger to the garden just as we're having so much trouble? "Oh, I don't mean you aren't most welcome," the cucumber said to Mirabelle. But we have to be careful down here. Life on the Coral Reef used to be paradise, he sighed. Things are changing, Seahorse. We need to find out what's happening. He turned and wriggled away. Take care now, he warned. He's no bad fellow, said the Seahorse, but let's not talk about that now. Before we can get to the garden, we must pass through the grotto of the green eels. What are they? She asked. They're fearsome to behold, but if we're lucky, you will never see them. Mirabelle did not like the sound of that at all. The Seahorse led her away from the wall along a shallow river of sand. The eels dwell in the holes and tunnels in this ring of islands, he whispered. Stay very close to me, and no matter what you see, keep swimming. When we reach the other side, I'll be safe. What do you mean safe? She blurted out. The eels won't harm you, but they might very well eat me, the Seahorse admitted. He quivered as he started forth. Mirabelle tried to call him back, but it was too late. Her throat tightened. She couldn't make a sound. As they approached the center of the grotto, Mirabelle saw something move. The Seahorse must have seen it too. She remembered his words, no matter what you see. But she had to know. She turned and looked. One by one, long green creatures with flat bodies and black eyes slithered from their hiding places. They moved silently through the water with jaws open wide. Without thinking, Mirabelle reached for the Seahorse and scooped him up in her hands. Swim, Mirabelle, swim, she heard the Seahorse shout. It was the only time he had ever called her by name. The eels surrounded her like terrible green waves. Mirabelle could hear her heart pounding and wondered if the eels could hear it too. She felt something slithery move across her leg, but she swam on and held the little Seahorse close to her heart. Her only thought now was for his safety. She had seen the grotto exit from the other side, but now clouds of swirling sand blocked the exit from view. A bright storm of sand arose from the seafloor as the tails of the eels whipped through the water. Mirabelle longed to be safe in her Sea Green Bathtub. What shall I do? What shall I do? She thought. Feel like a fish, came the silent reply. She closed her eyes and felt the water smooth on her skin. She felt the contour of the waves. Mirabelle now propelled herself swiftly through the clouded water toward the unseen exit. She felt the sea hold her up and move her as if she weighed nothing at all. When she opened her eyes again, the eels were nowhere in sight. She whirled around and saw that the grotto was now far behind her. Let me out, she heard a voice crying. Are you all right? She asked, opening her hands. I was just a little cramped in there, the Seahorse said, stretching his tail and fluttering his fin to be sure it was working properly. You swam just like a fish, he told her. I did, didn't I, said Mirabelle, surprised at herself. She felt somehow different, that it would be much later, that she would understand that she was not the same at all, and never would be again. Chapter 4. The two friends continued side by side, as friends would. After a while, they came to a forest of trees, where yellow branches arched high overhead. A giant barrel sponge sat beneath them like an ancient tree stump. They passed under the arching branches and entered the garden of the sea fans. I'm home, shouted the Seahorse. Mirabelle could not have imagined this place even in her dreams. Large fan-like shapes grew on rounded hills of silver sand. They danced upon the hills like mermaid tails of colored lace, yellow, pink, lavender, and gold. Back and forth and back they swayed in the flow of the current. They're beautiful, Seahorse, exclaimed Mirabelle. What are they? These are the giant sea fans of the Coral Reef, he answered. This is where the seahorses live. Strangers think that sea fans are plants, but they aren't, said the Seahorse. They're animals, just like all the other corals. But what is a coral, Mirabelle asked. No one ever tells me. The corals are all around you, Mirabelle, the seabird said. You have been amongst them the whole journey here. But all I've seen are fishes and flowers, rocks and trees, she said, not knowing how to see them. The words of the queen angelfish echoed in her mind. Down and down in the deep blue sea, not all is as it appears to be, and there are things that you will not see, however near those things may be, until you learn to see in the sea that everything is a possibility. Everything in our garden is made of corals, except seahorses and fishes, and you, of course. You're a Mirabelle, laughed the seahorse. Mirabelle laughed too. Corals are animals that never move, the seahorse continued. When they are just beginning to grow, they attach themselves to something and live in that place their whole lives. Even though they are animals, they don't have brains or hearts like seahorses and girls, he explained. Mirabelle swam from fan to fan like a butterfly flitting from flower to flower. She stopped to admire a pink one. It looked as though it were some snowflakes. She put her face close to the lacy fan and peeked through. An eye peering out from the other side startled her. Who's there? She asked. It's only the trumpetfish, assured the seahorse. He's a relative of mine. The silverfish was standing on his head. When he's upside down, he looks more like a coral than a fish. At least to other fishes, explained the seahorse. He can disappear and still be there. Now look closer, Mirabelle, the seahorse told her. Each coral shape you see is made up of many tiny coral animals living side by side and one on top of the other. Small and delicate in their own fragile shells, the corals grow together to build the beautiful designs that form on a coral reef. How do corals eat? Mirabelle asked. Each tiny coral reaches its arms into the sea for food and light, and as they do, the whole coral blooms like a flower, like a tree. The seahorse named each coral as they swam through the garden. But suddenly, the colors were gone. The seahorse had brought Mirabelle to the edge of a white desert of crumbling corals. There were no living corals here, no tiny colorful fish. Sea fan skeletons lay uprooted, scattered on the sandy floor. Tangled bones of coral stretched as far as she could see. Once this too was a garden, the seahorse said. No one comes here now. What happened to them, Mirabelle cried. We don't know, he said. Sometimes the water feels too warm, other times it tastes too salty. That's when the corals begin to turn white and die. Mirabelle's heart was breaking as they turned away. Sadness overcame her. Her teardrops fell and became part of the sea. Why did the seahorse show her such a terrible thing, she asked herself. She wanted to help the corals, but what could she do? The seahorse led Mirabelle back into the living garden, where sea anemones bloomed hot pink and feather corals grew like ostrich plumes. Clusters of hollow sponges swayed from side to side, a safe home for tiny fish that zigzag in and out like lightning streaks of electric blue. Chapter 5. Soon the two friends arrived at a row of yellow sea fans, billowing like ruffled petticoats. The seahorse disappeared into the fans, and Mirabelle couldn't find him anywhere. Here I am, a voice called. Over here, said another, and then a trill of laughter came from all around her. Shyly, one by one, seahorses of many colors from other coral reefs came forth from their yellow camouflage to welcome her. So we're here at last, said the eldest. We've been waiting for you. Some of us have come very far to meet you. It's been a long time since anyone came down to our garden for the Sea Green Bathtub. The Sea Green Bathtub is very, very old, he explained. But the last one to come was your mother. She came as a young one, just like you. Mirabelle was confused. Why didn't she tell me, she asked. Perhaps as she grew older, she just forgot about us, said the seahorse. I will never forget you, seahorse. Not ever. And then with joyful daring, she flung her arms wide and floated into the sea space with nothing above or below. She felt so small, yet as big as the sea itself. She knew she was alone, but she felt part of everything. The seahorses clung to the sea fans on the wall. They had never ventured out as far as she had never could. They watched and wondered as Mirabelle drifted like a balloon in a blue summer sky, doing somersaults with parrotfish. She was fun too. She turned on her back to watch a transparent jellyfish float overhead. When she looked up, she was surprised to see a watery image of her mother peering down through the daisies in the bathwater above. She must be trying to find me, she shouted to the seahorse. I'm here, Mother. Can't you see me down here? She called silently. And then she remembered that only those beneath the Sea Green Bathtub could understand her. Maybe she can't see you this far down, suggested the seahorse. Yes, you might be right. I'd better go back up now. But I don't want to leave you, Mirabelle said. You can always find me in the garden again if you know how to feel like a fish, said the little seahorse. Cheer for the corals, Mirabelle. He swished his tiny tail, and before Mirabelle could wave goodbye, he was gone. Slowly she floated upwards. Hello, Mother, she said as she walked to the surface. Her words sounded like a stream of bubbles. Mirabelle, you must be waterlogged by now, laughed her mother. No, I'm fine. Didn't you see me down there? She asked excitedly. Down where, honey? Down there. Mirabelle pointed to the bottom of the Sea Green Bathtub. The seahorse came up and took me down to his coral garden at the edge of the sea. Remember when we were there? I do remember, her mother smiled as she wrapped Mirabelle in a fluffy white towel. I remember the green angelfish and the green eels and the corals that looked like flowers. Why didn't you take me there? Asked Mirabelle. Mirabelle, you've been swimming in the Sea Green Bathtub since you were a baby. I knew the day would come when your love of the sea would help you find the garden all by yourself, said her mother. Have you forgotten to feel like a fish? Mirabelle asked her mother. I think I have, Mirabelle. Then I'll teach you so that we can swim in the garden together and find a way to help the corals. Before they pulled the plug, Mirabelle and her mother looked deep into the bathwater. There was no sign of the seahorse now, but they found a bit of red seaweed floating among the daisies. Before she fell asleep that night, Mirabelle tucked the red seaweed under her pillow, just the way her mother had done so many years ago. Below the Sea Green Bathtub, the night corals bloomed, while the sea waited for the blue sun to shine down again tomorrow. Mirabelle imagined herself curled up under the yellow sea fans, the sea horses safely hidden in the long tendrils of her hair. She knew the green angelfish would keep watch as the girl from the Sea Green Bathtub went to sleep, quietly singing her new song to the sea. Down, down in the deep blue sea, where everything's a possibility, the corals are waiting for you and me. The end, but possibly only the beginning. If we have 5 or 10 minutes, I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about corals. They're so interesting. And I want to leave time for questions and answers. So, do you know that Florida has the most shallow water coral reefs near its coastline than anywhere else in the continental United States? We are so lucky. But that means that we have a big responsibility to protect them. As we know from the story, corals may look like plants, they are in fact animals. Their scientific name is Amphizoa, which means flower animals. Sometimes called tropical rainforests of the sea, coral reefs are the ocean's most precious habitat. Coral reefs and rainforests are similar because they both provide home and food to millions of living creatures. The coral reefs began growing as long as 50 million years ago and now are home to about 1/3 of the world's marine life. Coral reefs are some of the largest living structures on Earth and can even be seen from outer space. You might ask, how are such reefs formed? Well, there are two kinds of coral, stony and soft. The stony corals, like brain coral and star coral, look like huge boulders and mounds. They build a foundation of the coral reef with their limestone skeletons made from a mineral they take out of the seawater. Soft corals don't have a hard skeleton, and they resemble trees, bushes, fans, grasses, and flowers. They are very important because that's where most of the little creatures on the reef, like seahorses, live, in those soft corals, like sea fans. Now, even though you've just learned that corals attach themselves to the seafloor and never move, guess what? When they're babies, they move. Imagine this. It's nighttime and the moon is full. It's then that the corals release their eggs and sperm into the water. The sperm and eggs float up towards the moonlight. They come together and form tiny baby swimming coral larvae. The babies ride the ocean currents until they find a good place to swim down, attach themselves to the bottom, and grow into a new coral colony. From baby larvae to a 5-mile coral reef, corals can live up to 5,000 years, making them the longest living animals on Earth. Researchers say that in perfect conditions, coral colonies could live forever. But sadly, because of human pollution and warming ocean waters, corals on the coral reef have become as endangered as the trees in the Amazon rainforest. Now I'm opening this up to questions, and I invite you to look at the stony corals and the soft coral little sea fans that I found on the beach in Dunedin when my husband and I went diving there. And it makes it very clear that the foundation of the coral reefs is the stony corals. You have some questions?
I have a question. What's your favorite coral?
I'm sorry?
What is your favorite coral that you see when you're scuba diving?
What's your favorite coral? My favorite coral is obviously the sea fans. The sea fans. Yeah, they're so beautiful. I missed a dive once. I got sick the day before something I ate. And my husband Brooks went on the dive. It was a boat dive. And they dived on the Garden of the Mermaids. And something like that. And it was the sea fans. I've never seen a collection of sea fans like that. But I'm not quite
So did he take pictures for you?
Pardon?
Did he take pictures for you?
No, he lost his underwater camera. But there are so many beautiful pictures of sea fans. I used so many photos for my research. I had hundreds and hundreds that I put together, and sometimes they change their composition. And I wanted them to look like what they are. I didn't want a cartoon book. I wanted to feel real. So I hope I accomplished that.
I just have to say, it looks very real. I started diving after Sea Hunt was on TV in 1960, and I was 16 years old, and I got equipment, and I took a class, and I started diving, and it just took me back to so many of the places I never got to, and some of the places I did.
Where were you in?
New York. And it was really lousy diving in New York. And then when I moved to Florida in 67,
See, I like you talking about that.
Richie,
Is that
Lloyd Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges. I said, because I was always a fish. And when I saw that show, it just inspired me to how to do that. And it just was really beautiful and moved me. And I liked your story.
Thank you. It's full circle for me as a Pisces.
How many places have you dived at, and what's your favorite place?
Oh, yeah. I went to the Antilles. That was my favorite. But there were other places that didn't feel as successful. Either the dive guides were not good, or we didn't have access to what we had on the land. We had such freedom there. We did a night dive, and that was something. Right off the dock, we were with an experienced diver, and she was actually a scientist, and she was studying theology. And we went down in the dark with our little flashlights, and we watched the sun come up at dawn. And it was just amazing. I know that Adrian.
Stay with the mic, stay with the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure that Adrian has many stories.
Is there a lot of damage to the corals here in Florida?
Oh, there's terrible damage. I have a friend who 20 years ago used to go down to the Keys and dive with his wife. And he said, Suzanne, we were there 2 years ago and there was nothing. It was all gray. We have lost so much. We have to go out so much farther to see anything. And really, it's the deep water corals that may survive what we've done, where the colder water exists. But we don't have the same kinds of corals. We need to change things right away, and things like the climate don't change right away. There aren't enough of us getting solar panels and electric cars and turning off the water when we brush our teeth and picking up trash on the beach. All of that matters. And there are so many laws that are passed that are ignored, like these fishing boats that have these disposable nets now, and when they're done with them for the day, they drop them in the ocean, they fall on the coral reef, and they smother everything. I don't know. It's just we have a careless world. And if people knew how we depend on the rainforest and the coral reefs, I just fear that we won't understand until we're gone. But I am so grateful for you coming to hear Mirabelle's story and continuing your interest. I'm afraid it's
I wish you would write that, because this is lovely, but nobody will take note if they just see lovely. I think you also need to see the underside. You saw very little of it in your white picture,
No,
but
I was
I think there must be more of the message, of the message.
That's the education. Well, at the end of the book, at the end of the story, I do have a glossary, 4-page glossary of the all the creatures, and then I have I include a website that children can go to, and 5 different ways that you can help the corals. Simple ways. I could write that story, but that would be considered educational, which I would love to do. I'd have to go to Scholastic for that probably.
Yeah, but I think it's necessary. I think if you have the same characters, that the same characters should take a trip to the not so successful areas and talk about those fishnets especially.
If I were going to write another book, it would be called Mirabelle and the Coral Gardeners. Because there are coral gardeners all over the world planting corals that would be the story. Yeah, I don't know if I have the time or the energy. It's there, it's here, and it's here. And everyone has encouraged me to do that, and I thank you.
Are the coral gardens successful? Are they?
Yes.
They
They are, for $1, you can buy a coral. Just type in Google coral gardens. You can buy a coral and they will plant it. As far as Polynesia and places where the corals are still holding on, I don't know if there's I'd have to contact the Tampa Aquarium to see if they have a coral nursery there that you could go and visit. But I don't know if they are working with coral gardeners.
Where is that?
The Tampa Aquarium, which is a wonderful place.
Yes.
Yes.
A friend of mine sent me a picture. He and his wife do diving down at some islands around Venezuela. And they were hoping coral could show this thing with all these little sticks out, and they were picking all these little live corals. They were harvesting them to help save.
They've been growing them underwater,
Yes.
and then when they're ready. I bet that was Margarita Island. Think so?
I can't think of the name. I know the name, but I can't.
That's the most famous island off of Venezuela. Yes.
You mentioned that the coral reefs are dying and they are growing. Are the new coral reefs planted at the same place? Or a new place?
In
They are usually planted where corals have died. They're both stony corals and the soft corals.
Why do they think they will grow when the end is done?
I think the word is hope. People who are passionate about the coral reefs, they sustain themselves with hope.
So do they have to clear that area and then rebuild?
No, because a lot of times, that structure, that stony coral structure still has to be in place. That can be destroyed. There's a disease, it's called stony coral something disease. And if that takes hold, it actually disintegrates the skeletons that are made with a form of calcium. But it's where there's a chance. Maybe a hurricane has come through, or a typhoon or something that has affected. I don't know if they're planting them where the water is just too salty, too warm, that they wouldn't have a chance. But they might be planting them lower where the water is cooler. It's fascinating. You could go on and research all of this. And they're so lovely, they're so amazing. I hope all of you will do a little bit of your own research. Yes.
A long time ago, when I turned 50, I was in Hawaii, and they were already doing those grids, and we got to take some corals and help attach them to those grids. And that was 1966. But look how long ago it's been and how often they've been doing this, planted them all. And that was Hawaii. We've been to Bonaire and seen the same thing.
Most people didn't know about that.
No, exactly.
They're out there, so.
But I'd love to know if they took hold and if they're healthy or we work with them.
Yeah. Well, we all have $1, don't we? Or two. Yes. I know our time is almost up. Oh. Well, I am just so happy to share Mirabelle with you and the corals with you, and I always feel it's really a good thing to hear the story.